Welcome to the Allan Reports TV. I'm your host, Allan Labucan. Today as we spoke in our last show, we're getting ready to do some changes to the format of the show. And today's show is going to be our first in a series of interviews with company insiders from resource companies to hear what they're working on and an overview of their company and some of the milestones ahead and stuff like that. And on today's show, we have a great guest in Yale Simpson. Yale's the co-chair of Extorre, and they've got a really great story down in Argentina with a great discovery that they've come across. And we're going to talk about that today. Before getting started, I always like to do my disclosure. First of all, we're not shareholders of the company. Extorre is a banner sponsor on our website, and they also are a featured company in our Allan Reports email newsletter, and we've talked about them several times on our shows. So now that we've got that all out of the way, I'd like to bring Yale Simpson into the interview. Thanks a lot for joining us today, Yale.
Good, Allan. It's good to hook up this way. We haven't done it before. Let's give her a shot.
Yeah, and this is my first time doing an interview as well. I've been interviewed several times, and so I hope we can work through all the kinks and everything like that. So again, thanks a lot for coming on today, Yale.
Sure.
So let's get started. How I came about learning about Extorre actually was before Extorre even came into existence. It was when the Sierra Morro project was part of Exeter. And then you guys spun it off, and the rest is history, so to speak. So why don't you take it from there, Yale, and give us an overview of sort of how things have progressed since you went public.
Well, we went public in middle of March in 2010. What's interesting when you spin out something, because I am the chairman of Exeter, and Exeter spun out Extorre in March, as I said. When you spin out a company, we did it because you didn't think we were getting the value that was within the Argentina assets. And then when you spin out something, you tend to look at it from a very engineering point of view. And we were putting a value on Extorre at that time in our minds of say, 100 million, because we were comparing it to what Exeter had in Chile. Clearly, we got that number wrong because it started off trading at about $1.37. Back in March of 2010, and it's traded up to $12, which shows really what happens in a spin-out. You put new management in there, give them some funds. The CEO, a new CEO in there who's a young guy who wants to make a mark on the world, and you can see the different dynamic you get when you do a spin-out. It's classic value creation. It stunned us, I must say.
Well, it's been a very happy situation for myself and our readers and viewers. We've talked a lot in the past about Extorre, and in fact, the last time I was on BNN, I got a chance to talk about Extorre as one of my picks, and this was just before the Zoe discovery, which has been a really exciting new development for the company. Why don't we talk a little bit about the Sierra Morro project and sort of how things have progressed to the point where we're now at this new discovery with Zoe?
All right. Just as background, this project came out of Anglo Gold in 2003. Allan, you know that. But back in 2003, when gold price was sub $300 an ounce, we picked up 24 projects from Anglo that they weren't working on, all of them in the southern region of Patagonia. We worked on those. We started drilling Sierra Morro in about 2005, and by the time we got to 2007, we started to come into some high grade. So we've been at it, we've clearly been at it for a while. The resource that we knew of, and the Zoe discovery, let's put it aside for a bit. The original resource that we put out in April of 2010 was about 1 million ounces gold equivalent at a grade of approximately 14 grams per ton. And we did in October of 2010, so what is that, so 9 months ago.
Now, when you say 14 grams, that's an equivalent grade, right? The combination of silver and gold?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry for interrupting. Go ahead.
So what, yeah, and that's a good point. The value at that time, there's about equal value in silver. And so we say gold equivalent. In fact, in that resource, we used the silver to gold value ratio of 60 to 1. 60 to 1. You wouldn't use that today because the silver price is higher. So the million ounces gold equivalent we modeled, and in October of last year, we did a preliminary economic assessment, a PEA. In the U.S., they call them scoping studies. And that was to say, what are the economics of what we had at that time? Now, we also were getting into new discoveries at that time, but we're not quite there yet in this story. So that PEA came out, and it modeled 133,000 ounces a year of production, gold equivalent. So half of that being gold, the rest being silver. And it also modeled impressively a cash cost of $201 an ounce.
Wow.
Okay, so at that time we didn't have the Zoe discovery yet. We had some other minor discoveries, but not yet Zoe. So we said, let's take this to pre-feasibility study. And so the engineers came in there. We did more infill drilling. We did more metallurgy. And the pre-feasibility study on that was due to come out this month, June. The Zoe discovery came into being, I don't know exactly which month it was, say it was around March or so of this year, February, March. We discovered Zoe, which, and to paint a picture here, the Cerro Moro project that we're talking about is a vein system. And by way of system, what I mean is that there's not simply one vein, there's a multitude of veins. I don't know how many ultimately would be there, but let's say ultimately maybe 100. And some of them show themselves at surface, but most of them don't. And the ones that do show at surface are almost invariably the worst ones, the low-grade ones that are high in quartz or silica. So the Zoe discovery, what's interesting is that we would have the Zoe discovery. Did I lose you?
Yeah, we're having a little bit of technical difficulties, Yale, but that's okay because we're still getting the audio from your phone, so we're okay. If you reconnect to the Skype, we should be good.
So why don't you call me and I'll connect again. We'll get the video back. So
okay.
We're going to continue here.
Yep.
On the situation of Zoe. Remember, we had been drilling this property for as much as 6 years, all right? 6 years of drilling. Now, why we missed Zoe was because Zoe has no outcrop. There's simply nothing to see at surface. So what we needed to do then was to start getting a few drill holes into it. Now, Zoe is directly along trend from the main deposit. So that being the case, how are we doing on the video?
Yeah, we're back on with the Skype video. We're good, Yale.
Okay. So the video, the discovery of Zoe was about a mile or about 2 kilometers along trend from our best vein.
Which was, that's called the Esperanza, if I'm right, or which one's that vein called?
Well, you're partly right. There is a vein called Esperanza. This one was called Escondida.
Escondida. Sorry about that.
What's remarkable about Escondida is, from the historic drilling we had done, it was averaging, in terms of grade, somewhere around 35 grams per ton gold equivalent. And we've been modeling our first production for the mine on the Escondida vein. So when we found the discovery along trend with Zoe, it wasn't a surprise that it was coming in at high grade. And the grades that we've announced are what we call high grade is anything better than 20 grams per ton gold equivalent. I mean, what the industry might carry, or the industry would call high grade, probably better than anything, that's 3 grams.
Yes.
This has come in as high grade, and we've now got something like 40 drill holes into it. But what's interesting, Allan, is when you look at this, the way we evaluate things is that we get about 10 holes into the discovery area, and then we start stepping out along trend. And the increments that we stepped out on this was every 160 meters. So we go out at 500 feet, and then 500 feet again, 500 feet again, to try to get a sense of how long might the vein be, and how should we approach the drilling of Zoe. In other words, we're coming at it, could this be 5 million ounces, or could it be 4, 3, 2? But we didn't want to simply keep drilling it and say, well, it's now gone from 100,000 ounces to 200 to 300. We said, could this be a major discovery? So we kind of marked out the size. We know the central zone is about 1 kilometer long. I think we've got a deeper drill hole into it now that shows it's about 250 meters in depth. But we're still drilling this very coarsely.
Now, Yale, the Escondida, that is, you're intersecting those high grades pretty close to surface, correct?
That's right.
And in Zoe, is it the same kind of a situation, really fairly close to surface?
Oh. That's why it took us 5 years to find it.
Okay.
There's no surface expression of the ore body. When you go into that area of the property, and people can go to our website and they'll see it, because it's in one of the PowerPoints there. At surface, the geologists found some rusty rocks that were assaying about 0.37 of a gram per ton. So 0.37 of a gram is almost nothing in terms of gold, but it did run about 130 grams per ton silver, which is, that's about 3 ounces of silver. So the geologist, because it was on the contact between 2 rock units, what we could call L1 and L4, he said that is the same position that we have Escondida on, about 3 kilometers away.
Okay, so there was a similarity in the rock types there.
So he asked for one drill hole to come underneath this outcrop of 0.34 grams, and it went from, when he drilled underneath it at about 60 meters depth, it went up to 2 grams.
Yeah.
And then give me another drill hole, because we're getting close to the geologists, what they call the boiling zone of this epithermal system.
Isn't that always the way, Yale, that these projects, somebody needs to be the champion of the project, and for any company really, when it comes to exploration and development. And it sounds like you had a good champion there asking for more holes.
Well, it took him 2 years to get to get the first drill hole.
Okay.
Zoe rank is our number 15 and 15th.
But that probably had a lot to do with how well things were going with your drilling on the Escondida too. Correct? Am I correct?
Well, so what happened was he finally got to drilling priority number 15. It was named Zoe because the geologist who found it named it after his daughter.
Oh, nice.
So what has subsequently happened is then what we found is, and I'm going to keep talking here, we're going to get the video back. Then what he found out then was that the boiling zone, the target zone, in his view, wasn't going to come into a depth really of 100 meters below surface. Now that's not a whole lot different from what we have along trend at Escondida. Yes, Escondida will be mined open pit in part, but the main bulk of the ore body is below 100 meters. And that's about the same as what we would also see elsewhere in the district. Okay, so that's no different what Goldcorp have at Cerro Negro. Their ore bodies come in at about 200 meters depth. So Zoe then became what we call a blind ore body. And in the drilling along trend, where I'm saying we're drilling every 160 meters, that's not drilling on anything we see at surface. That's the geologists using geophysics and what have you to come up with that trend. So where we're at is Zoe clearly, based on the drilling we have, has the potential to be a total game changer for the project. We are already remodeling this project from a production scenario, and we announced that this week.
Yeah, I saw that news release, Yale, and I guess before we get into some of the recent news, I had a couple more. I wanted to talk a little bit more about the. So it sounds to me like the exploration technique is like in all exploration projects. You're either looking for surface expressions through your sampling, or hopefully sometimes geophysics can work and sometimes it can't, or it doesn't help as much. Sounds like you guys are having a good success with your either surface sampling, or now have a sort of a geophysical signature, if you will, to give you some ideas of where you want to go in future exploration, not just on Escondida and Zoe, but on the remaining part of the Cerro Moro project, because that's also could add significantly down the road as well.
Yeah. If you'd like to look at this, I mean, geophysics helps, but if you say how much does it cost you to find an ounce of gold, on this project, if you look at this project historically, and remember it's now at fully engineered pretty much for a production decision, it's cost us about $25 an ounce to find gold, put it into inventory. $25 an ounce on these quality ounces is a good investment. You can say, well. But we have found that if we just continue to drill on the multitude of geophysical targets, eventually, we get rewarded by spend $25, there's your ounce of gold. If you want another 1 million ounces into inventory, it's going to cost you perhaps $25 million to fully drill it off. It might cost you $1 million to make the discovery. But the number of drill holes...
Now, when you say fully drill it off, do you mean to put that into the proven and probable categories, or would that be in a resource type of a calculation?
Let's just separate. Let's call it resources. It would be in the measured and indicated.
Okay, gotcha.
It can go into our mining plan. It would cost you that amount of money to put it into the mining plan. The Zoe discovery, I don't know how many drill holes it's going to need. Our engineers are working on that, but we anticipate about 400 drill holes will bring it into, fully bring it into the mining plan. That's why we have 4 drills on it now and 2 more rigs coming in this week. So 6 rigs to drill it. And with 6 rigs going, you complete 2 holes a day.
Okay.
So you get the 200 days of drilling will bring Zoe fully into the mining plan.
So 6 drill rigs, that's all focused just on Zoe?
That's right.
And do you have other drill rigs working elsewhere in the project, or is all the focus now on drilling off Zoe?
The geologists, we will always, right now I can say the rigs are all on Zoe. I wouldn't be surprised if one of those rigs then goes off onto some other targets.
Because you've got your guys are out there looking for more targets, I'm assuming.
Well, we already have them.
Okay.
And the geologists remind us that Zoe was ranked number 15.
Nice, okay, I gotcha.
So we will always, the geologists will always bang on the table and say, give us that one of those rigs, because we think there's potential for another Zoe there.
Well, I hope they don't have to twist your arm very hard.
Well, you can't, because remember, in terms of where we are with the company, we are fully engineered, if you like, or we're close to fully engineered to pushing the button on a mining decision. Our question is, how big will this mine be? And that's our dilemma. Is you're not going to build a mine you're not going to build a plant half the size that so we are a bit of a moving target.
You still got me there, Yale?
I can see you.
Perfect. Yeah, I'm glad we kind of did this with both the audio and the video. Sometimes Skype can be a little tricky, but it's all been working out so far, so you started to talk a little bit about how things are now moving towards getting an idea on the potential for this to be a mine. One of the, I can't remember which report it was in, but I seem to remember that the from one of the news releases that your estimated cost of bringing it into production are very low. I think a lot of that has to do probably with the ease of access on that project and the ability to work year round. Why don't we talk a little bit about that, Yale, so our listeners and viewers can get an idea that this isn't just a great project because of the high-grade nature of what you've found. It's also really accessible, and that helps bring down the cost of bringing something into production in an environment such as this is in.
Yeah, well, maybe, good point. The capital cost that we are modeling for this project was $130 million. That was on the basis of mining 750 tons of ore a day. Out of the back of the plant, you'd say, what do you get? Our recoverable grade that we are modeling after we blend high grade, low grade was half an ounce of gold per ton. So the 750 ton a day plant was producing 375 ounces of gold equivalent a day. That's really an efficient use of capital. There's not many mines, if you like, that would produce this 133,500 ounces of gold a year on an investment of only $130 million. And that's because of grade. And when we modeled it back then in October, that gave us an operating cost of $201 an ounce.
Wow, that's like at the bottom of the industry type numbers. That sounds like 10 years ago kind of numbers.
Well, if we were to have run those numbers today, using the existing engineering, it would have been significantly better than that, because that's using a silver to gold ratio of 60 to 1. And in our current studies, we're using 50 to 1. So if we just use 50 to 1, that $201 an ounce would be lower. I don't know, maybe $180 an ounce.
Wow.
So it clearly reflects grade. And you're very right. This project, in terms of production, to produce open pit, half ounce per ton, I don't know anybody who's doing that. That's an extraordinary grade, and that's why it's unique.
Yeah, well, the one thing that I am noticing a lot, Yale, I do a lot of homework trying to find companies to talk about in my reports or on my shows, and every once in a while you come across a company that has a world-class project. One of those companies that has done that for me recently is Osisko. I followed Osisko from the early days of the discovery through to now being a producer and coming into production when you've got gold at record highs over $1,500. That's in nominal terms. But what I noticed when a company has what you could truly call world class, I hear that term thrown around loosely sometimes, but when a company has a truly world class project, often the valuations that you see along the way through your various different milestones is much more significant. And the way things have been since you've come across the Zoe discovery, I think it's definitely moving in that direction.
Well, I think, and that's a good point. In terms of the valuation parameters, a bit of an advertisement is go to our website, and if you look at any of the PowerPoints, you'll see various analysts who have covered us, which goes from Canaccord to TD to Salmons to Macquarie's to BMO. There's a lot of coverage on the stock, and there are various price targets put out by the analysts. The size of, when you look at the valuation on Extorre, clearly to say Extorre we have 1.2 million ounces on a property called Don Sixto, which we haven't talked about.
Yes.
We have 1 million ounces historically that we drilled off up until 16 months ago at Cerro Moro. So you'd say cumulatively 2.3 million ounces. The company's market capitalization today is about $1.2 billion. Now, clearly, when an analyst looks into the drilling that we've been doing in the last 16 months, there's a lot more mineralization identified than the 2.2 million ounces historical resource. If you simply say, no, all I'm going to give them credit for is 2.2 million ounces, you'd say, boy, this company's expensive. It's got a market cap of $600 per ounce.
Gotcha.
No. That doesn't account for discoveries that we call Martina, Carla, the new Zoe. There's three of them there.
Plus a multitude of other targets, too.
Yeah, I think I'll put this in a further perspective, Allan. When you say what is the capacity of the project, let's look at it regionally. The closest mine to us is to the west. It's operated by AngloGold Ashanti. Now, AngloGold has been mining there for about 14 years, okay? And that, as I understand it, is the second lowest cost producer in Anglo. And they're producing, their head grade is about 9 grams per ton. It's open pit, and they're just going underground. Now, how big is that deposit? When they started mining that back 14 years ago, it was about 2.5 million ounces. They've been mining at a rate of 250,000 ounces a year since, for 14 years, and they currently have about 3.5 million ounces in resources. So as they mine it out, they drill it to replace their ounces, and they've been doing that for 14 years, and that's a story we always hear with veins. You can't afford to drill them off out of early stage money, because that's cash, that's public money that you're raising, it's dilution. You simply say, let's get it in production and go. The other example, which has really affected the perception of Extorre, is a company called Andean Resources, north of us, defined about 3 million ounces. And that company was taken over by Goldcorp. Goldcorp paid $3.7 billion to buy Andean. This was a deal done last September.
Yeah, just recently.
They were buying the upside of that project because within 6 months, Goldcorp turned around and say it's now 6 million ounces, not 3. And when you look at us in terms of the pedigree of the district, drill those holes, and the question I have geologically is, will this be 3 million, 4 million, 5 million ounces as we drill our field? Like I said, there's over 100 veins, I'm sure there. We've named about 30 of them. And so I think people have to put in perspective, this resource inventory is growing, but what really separates the project is these incredible grades of gold, silver.
And the lots of targets, and yeah, it's been a very exciting project, and the market is definitely liking what they've seen so far, as I have, and I really like the direction. Just in the last this week earlier, there's been a couple news releases out. One of them, I believe, was an announcement of a bought deal financing for $25 million. And the other one was some updates on how things are progressing with your pre-feasibility type work. First of all, on the $25 million raise, it's awfully nice to be raising that when you only have to put out a couple million shares to get that kind of funding, so it really helps keep the dilution down.
The dilution was only 2%.
Right.
Okay? I was delighted with that. What's interesting is that we didn't raise any more money than we needed to.
Yes.
Because pushed back, we were in a position prior to the Zoe discovery to announce a production decision by the board in Q3, which would be July through September. We would announce taking the project to production. But if we did that today, we'd be taking the wrong size project to production.
Gotcha.
And Zoe is making a big difference. So we said, let's push back that decision to mine, not because we're not willing to mine it, it's because we've got to see how big it should be. So rather than going into your $130 million fundraising mode in Q3, Q4 of this year, we said, let's put that off till next year. $25 million will get us through drilling up Zoe, producing a new economic assessment of the project, and then we'll look at financing later. So we triggered to the market. We believe this is going to be bigger. Don't worry about the big dilution picture. We're pushing that off because we don't know quite yet when we're going to mine it.
Well, even to call it a big dilution, I mean, if you were to raise the money for it today at today's prices, it wouldn't be that incredible of a dilution, and you'd then have the funding to bring it into production. So those are nice problems to have in this business. You and I have both been around this business for a few years, Yale, and I think we both have the scars that tell us about how difficult in the past things were to raise money for something, to do this kind of advanced exploration work, as well as potentially to bring it into production. And so that's another very exciting thing about Extorre, and the recognition that you're getting for the work that you're doing.
Yeah, in terms of financing the mine, there's a strong argument, and it's a discussion that our CFO has with the rest of the people on the board, is that the Cerro Moro project would sustain debt. The payback on capital you're looking at for this project was less than 2 years when we were modeling it last October. It was 1.7 years. The economics today should be better than they were then, because the gold, we modeled it before at $1,000 gold and $16 silver.
Well, we got a lot better price on both those right now.
and so we signaled in this current study we're using different metal prices. So it does sustain, and we have been, it's been proposed to us by those banks who specialize in this sector that they do at least half of the financing on the back of this on debt. So let's say that we raised $150 million, that would be $75 million debt, $75 million equity. That's only 7.5 million shares. That's only 8% dilution.
Yeah.
And so you're very right. We are priced in a year where you're not looking at massive dilution to take this project forward. And that's, again, the benefit of high grade. You don't need that big a plant. And we're only 20 kilometers from the ocean. We're 80 kilometers from a deep water port. We're at an elevation of 100 meters above sea level. This is not the high Andes.
And it's nice flat terrain that you can get at year round. You can move equipment all over the place really easily. You know, these are all really positive factors to the economics of that project.
That's right. The entire infrastructure cost for this, in terms of the cost of bringing water and power and roads, upgrading the roads, is less than $20 million.
Okay.
That's including a power line.
Wow.
We're plugging into a state grid power, and I think we're modeling costs of 8 cents a kilowatt hour. So everything is right for this project, and right now let's just try to figure out what size really makes sense in terms of the development and keep those drills turning.
Okay. Well, before we wrap up the chat, Yale, there was one other thing I wanted to ask you about. Can you tell us a little bit about that news you had out just in the last day or so on the economic assessment and the work that you're doing on that front? Because I think you've had a bit of a change of focus, if you will.
Okay. Well, I hope your listeners are plugged into the National Instrument 43101 definitions of things. This study that was coming out this month was to be a pre-feasibility study. And at the end of that study, it would take your resources and move them into the reserve category because you have full economics against them.
Okay.
In Canada, you must, for a pre-feasibility study, you can only use what we call measured and indicated resources. You cannot use inferred resources.
Okay.
And so you're in this, but however, if you're going to do the study in Australia, or in many other jurisdictions, you can.
Okay.
So the Canadians are demanding that you only use the higher level resources. Now, the problem we have is that, so if we put this out as a pre-feasibility study, we're leaving out some of the resources that are economic. It's just that they're a lower level of category. The other thing is that the regulations in Canada say, once you put out a pre-feasibility study, you must follow that only by another pre-feasibility study. You cannot revert back to a preliminary economic assessment.
Okay.
What I'm saying there is the Zoe discovery will come out with an inferred resource, then we'll drill off to indicated and measured. We would like to incorporate Zoe into our mining plans at the earliest opportunity. We don't want to spend a year drilling it. So by putting out the current study, it's a preliminary economic assessment. We can follow it up by the end of the year with another economic assessment that shows the impact of Zoe.
And you're not constrained by those reporting standards.
So, it's a confidence thing. You'll say, okay, but you're quoting inferred resources. Well, my goodness, it doesn't mean they're not real.
Yes. It's just the density of your drilling isn't up to that next level of confidence.
Yeah, and let me point out something that your listeners might find really interesting. On a high-grade deposit like Cerro Moro, the more you drill it, the more the grades go up, not down. Okay. On low-grade deposits, typically, the more you drill them, the grades go down, not up. Okay.
Yeah.
Believe me, I know this. Okay. So Zoe grades typically go up, and you would typically find when you go to PFS, pre-feasibility study, your grades are higher than in the PEA because you drilled it more. So we'll come out with a PEA late this year that includes the Zoe and another discovery called Carla and another one called Martina. Those will come out at the end of the year, and that will allow us to model the project at not at 750 tons a day that it is today, but at 1,500 tons a day. And the Zoe discovery is higher grade than the known deposit. So far, if you just average the holes, it's the highest grade discovery so far.
Wow.
And I'd be optimistic that at the end of this year, the economic coming out then will blow your socks off.
Well, I sure like the sounds of that, Yale. And on that note, I think we should wrap it up. Going ahead, I think we're looking forward to a lot more drilling, these pre-feasibility studies, and see where that takes this exciting Cerro Moro project. Is that things in a nutshell?
That's things in a nutshell. I do thank you very much, Allan.
Hey, why don't you stick around on the Skype, Yale? What I'm going to do is I'll close off the show, and then I'll tell you how to find this when I post it and everything. So just give me about a minute here. Before closing, I'd like to stress that this show and the reports are for information purposes only. We aren't making buying or selling recommendations. It's important for you to do your own homework and speak with your financial advisors before making any investment decisions. We're always trying to grow our audience, and any efforts you make to help us to let people know about our website, our reports, and our shows would be greatly appreciated. Also, before closing, I'd like to thank, we use YouTube.com and Skype to do these, and that's really important, so we'll thank them. We've got a group of banner sponsors on our website that also make our work possible, so we'd like to thank them. And of course, to you, the viewers, thanks a lot for tuning in and watching this show. We're going to keep on doing these type of shows in the future, and they're lots of fun, and hope to have some great guests like Yale in future shows. And so stay tuned for future shows, and we'll talk to you soon. Have a great day.